I never thought I'd find myself back at Miller's Lake, not after all these years. The last time I was there, I was 15, sneaking out with a couple of friends, trying to prove we weren't scared of anything. Now, I was 62, dragging an old fishing rod behind me, hoping the lake could somehow soothe a heart that felt heavier than it had in decades. It had been a rough year. My son, Tom, had just left for college. My wife, Ellen, had passed 5 years earlier, and the house felt like a museum of memories I wasn't ready to face. The quiet was unbearable. Even the familiar creak of the front porch sounded hollow. I needed to get away, if only for a morning, to remember who I was before life started piling on regrets. I got to the lake just as the sun was climbing over the tree line, painting the water in gold and amber. I set up my chair, baited my hook, and sat staring at the water, trying to think of nothing. But of course, life has a way of forcing you to remember. That's when I saw him. A young man, no more than 20, struggling with a small boat that had a busted oar. He looked frustrated, angry at himself, muttering under his breath. I don't know why, but I stood up and called over, "Need some help with that?" He looked at me like I was a ghost, then nodded reluctantly. "Yeah, I guess." We got the boat untangled, fixed the oar as best we could, and then sat in silence, watching the lake ripple in the morning breeze. Finally, he spoke. "I don't know why I even came out here. Everything's a mess." I smiled softly. "Sometimes you come out here thinking you'll escape it all. But the lake, it doesn't care about your mess. It just is. And somehow that's a relief." He laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Easy for you to say. You don't know what it's like to feel lost." I hesitated, then said something I hadn't told anyone in decades. "I do. I've felt that way more times than I can count. Losing people, losing direction, losing yourself." We talked for hours, not about work, not about obligations, but about life, about fear, about mistakes, about love lost and chances missed. I saw myself in him, so full of fire, so convinced he had to face the world alone, and I wanted to tell him what someone never told me, that sometimes letting someone in doesn't make you weak, it makes you alive. By the time the sun hung high in the sky, we had shared stories, laughed at absurd memories, and even fried a little. When he finally packed up to leave, he shook my hand. "Thanks, old man," he said. I feel like I can breathe again." I watched him row away, feeling something I hadn't felt in years, a quiet, steady hope. That day I realized that, even at 62, life could surprise you. That even when it seems all you have left are memories, there's still a chance to make a difference, to touch someone's life, and in doing so, heal a piece of your own. On the drive home, I thought about my son, about the friends I'd lost, about Ellen, and I finally understood something important. Life isn't about holding on to what's gone. It's about finding those moments, big or small, where you can reconnect, forgive, and pass along what you've learned. Sometimes, a lake, a stranger, and a single morning are enough to remind you that it's never too late to start again.
I never thought I'd see her again. Not after all those years. Not after the way I left. But there she was, standing on the pier like she hadn't aged a day. And I felt every mistake I'd ever made crash down on me all at once. It started back in '68. I was 20, full of stupid bravado, working nights at a garage in a small Ohio town. That's where I met Clara. She had this laugh that made the fluorescent lights feel warm. She didn't care that I was just a mechanic's kid. She liked me anyway. We spent hours talking by the river, sneaking out past curfews, planning lives we had no idea how to live. But then came the war, Vietnam. Draft notice in the mail like a death sentence. I tried to talk myself into volunteering, make it feel noble, but deep down I knew I was running from something. Clara begged me to stay. "Don't go, Jack. Don't let them take you," she said, holding my hand like it might tether me to life itself. But I went. I thought I could survive anything, and I thought love would wait. It didn't. Letters came at first. She wrote about small things, her mother's new cat, a storm that knocked over the old oak tree in her yard. I wrote back, mostly lies about how brave I was, how fine everything was. But the months stretched into years and the letters slowed, then stopped. I came home to find she'd married someone else, a local banker, steady and safe. I can't even remember his name now. It was like a stranger had stolen her life. I wandered through the town like a ghost for a week, pretending to be okay, pretending I didn't care. I threw myself into work after that. Grease under my fingernails, engines in my veins. I married, had kids, built a quiet life, but I never stopped thinking about her. Never stopped imagining how different things could have been if I'd stayed. That's the trouble with regret. It sneaks into the cracks of your life and makes itself at home. Fast forward 50 years. My wife passed a few years back. The kids are grown, scattered across the country. Retirement hit me like a wave I wasn't ready for. I started walking the old streets of the town where it all began, mostly to feel like I still belonged somewhere. And that's when I saw her. Clara. Same smile, same eyes that had haunted my dreams for decades. Only older, softer around the edges, like the world had been careful with her in ways it hadn't been with me. I never thought I'd admit this to anyone, not even myself, but I guess some things don't get easier with age. They just get quieter, until one day they sneak back into your life. It was the winter of '79 when I learned that my father had been hiding a secret from me. I was 23, just out of the Army, working a construction job in Detroit, scraping by. My dad, George, was a gruff man, the kind who said more with a grunt than a sentence. He'd been distant ever since my mom died when I was 10. But that winter, he called me into the garage one night, the one he'd converted into a workshop after he retired. The smell of oil and sawdust hit me like a memory. He was hunched over an old wooden box, his hand shaking slightly. I didn't say anything. I just watched him. Finally, he spoke. "You need to tell me something about your brother." I froze. Brother? I never had a brother. Not unless he was talking about some kid I'd never known about. He died before you were born, Dad said, voice low, almost breaking. Vietnam. Your mother never got over it. I didn't either. That's why I wasn't much of a father for you. I didn't know how to. I didn't know what to say. My chest tightened. All those years of thinking I was alone, of thinking Dad just didn't care, and it turned out he was drowning in grief the whole time. We didn't talk much that night, but something shifted. Over the next months, we started fixing up old things in that garage together. Furniture, engines, whatever we could find. We didn't have to speak. The work was enough. And slowly I saw the man behind the rough edges. A man who loved, who lost, and who didn't know how to show it. Years later, I married, had kids, and became a father myself. I found that being a dad wasn't about being perfect. It was about showing up, about trying even when you weren't sure if you could do it. I thought about my brother sometimes, the one I never met, and it shaped the way I loved my own kids. I told them stories about him, about courage, about the kind of man he might have been, and I told them about my father, about the man who taught me to keep going, even when life feels like it's against you. Last winter, I found that old wooden box again, tucked behind a stack of newspapers. Inside were letters, pictures, medals. My father had kept every scrap of my brother's life. I spent the evening reading them, feeling a connection across time I never expected. I laughed, I cried, and I remembered Dad, who had carried a mountain of sorrow silently for decades. I guess the point is, life is complicated. People make mistakes, hold back, stay silent, but sometimes it's never too late to bridge the gaps, to understand, to forgive. I'd lost a brother I never knew and a father I never truly understood, but I found them both, in my own way, when I finally opened my eyes. Now, whenever I sit with my own grandchildren, teaching them how to build a birdhouse or fix a leaky faucet, I think about the legacy we leave behind. Not just the things we make, but the love we show, even quietly, even imperfectly. And I hope that someday they'll understand it too, that even when people disappear, even when secrets linger, the heart remembers and love finds a way back. I finally understand my father, and through him, I understand a little more about myself. Life doesn't give second chances often, but when it does, you don't ignore them. You walk straight into the light, and maybe, just maybe, you find the family you thought you'd lost forever.